Patricia had always been a light sleeper, but that Tuesday night at 2:47 a.m., she lay perfectly still, breath controlled, eyes closed, pretending to be deep in slumber while her husband James whispered into his phone just 3 feet away on the bedroom balcony with the door cracked open. His voice carried that tender tone. She recognized the one he used to use with her during their early dating years, before marriage became routine and affection became obligation. "I can't stop thinking about you, Jennifer," he murmured, and Patricia's heart seized in her chest, every muscle in her body screaming to confront him immediately, to throw something, to demand answers. But years of being a corporate negotiations consultant had taught her one critical lesson: never reveal your hand before you have all the cards. So she remained frozen, one hand tucked beneath her pillow where her phone was hidden. Recording app activated 15 minutes earlier when James's hushed movements had first woken her. "I know, baby. I know it's hard," James continued, his voice dripping with affection that made Patricia want to vomit. "But we've been careful for 8 months now. Patricia suspects nothing. She's so focused on her promotion, she barely notices when I'm gone. This weekend, when I told her I had that conference in Denver, I was with you the entire time, and it was perfect. God, you make me feel alive again." 8 months. 8 fucking months while Patricia had been working 70-hour weeks trying to make partner at her firm, while she'd been planning their 10-year anniversary trip to Greece, while she'd been going to marriage counseling alone because James said he was too busy with work projects. The recording app silently captured every word, every confession, every detail of hotel rooms and secret dates and lies stacked on lies. When James finally whispered "I love you" to Jennifer and ended the call, Patricia waited exactly 7 minutes until his breathing deepened into sleep. Then she slipped from bed, grabbed her phone, backed up the recording to 3 different cloud services, and locked herself in the guest bathroom. That's when Patricia stopped crying and started planning. What would you do if you heard your spouse confessing love to someone else while thinking you were asleep? Would you confront immediately, or would you wait? Before we continue, I see you watching but not subscribing, and it's completely free. I bring you these powerful stories daily, and I'm racing toward 1,000 subscribers. Help me reach that goal. It takes just 2 seconds. Patricia barely slept the remaining 4 hours before dawn, her mind racing through scenarios, possibilities, legal implications. By the time James woke at 7, she was already dressed for work, makeup flawless, smile practiced in the mirror until it looked natural. "Morning," she said brightly, handing him coffee exactly how he liked it. Watching him accept it with a grateful kiss on her cheek, the same lips that had said, "I love you too, Jennifer," hours earlier. The revulsion was physical, but Patricia's face remained serene, pleasant, the perfect, unsuspecting wife. James mentioned he had late meetings all week, and Patricia nodded sympathetically, asking if he needed her to pick up dry cleaning, already knowing those late meetings were probably more time with Jennifer. Every word out of his mouth felt like acid, but she swallowed it down, maintained the facade, because she had a recording, but she needed more. She needed bank statements. She needed to know how deep this went. She needed ammunition that would protect her completely. At her law firm that morning, Patricia couldn't concentrate on the merger documentation she was supposed to be reviewing. Instead, she opened an incognito browser window and researched divorce attorneys, specifically those who specialized in infidelity cases with asset protection. She found Elena Vasquez, a ruthless lawyer with a reputation for destroying cheating spouses in court, and booked a consultation for that afternoon during her lunch break. Patricia also called her bank, verified that she could transfer funds from their joint account without James's signature, and mentally calculated exactly half of everything they owned: the house, the cars, the investment portfolio. James thought he was so clever about all of it was about to become very relevant. She texted James at noon, "Hope your day is going well. Love you," and felt absolutely nothing typing those words. His response came 20 minutes later. "Love you too, babe. Crazy busy today," and Patricia wondered if he was with Jennifer right now, laughing about how easy it was to deceive his stupid, workaholic wife. That thought crystallized something inside her, a cold, sharp determination that replaced the heartbreak. She wasn't stupid. She was strategic, and James was about to learn the difference. Have you ever had to pretend everything was fine while your heart was breaking? How long could you keep up that act? Elena Vasquez's office was sleek glass and steel, impressive law degrees covering one wall. And the attorney herself was exactly what Patricia needed: sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor, and a handshake that communicated competence. Patricia played the recording, watched Elena's expression shift from professional interest to predatory satisfaction. "This is excellent evidence," Elena said, making notes. "Audio recordings are admissible in our state as long as one party consents, which you did, to your own recording, combined with bank records, phone records, and any other documentation you can gather. We can build an airtight case." Patricia listened carefully as Elena outlined strategy: file for divorce citing adultery, leverage the recording for maximum settlement, potentially pursue alienation of affection claims if Jennifer knew James was married. "But here's what I need you to do," Elena continued, leaning forward. "Don't confront him yet. Gather everything: financial records, proof of expenditures on her, hotel receipts if you can access them, text message backups, anything and everything. The more ammunition we have, the more he'll be motivated to settle quickly and generously rather than drag this through court where the recording becomes public record." Patricia felt a dark satisfaction at that: James's colleagues, his conservative family, their mutual friends, all hearing him confess his affair in his own voice. The humiliation would be exquisite. But Elena wasn't done. Also, start documenting everything
Patricia
he does.
had always been a light sleeper.
Every work trip, that Tuesday
every
night.
lie.
Keep a detailed journal with dates and times. This establishes pattern and proves ongoing deception. Patricia left that office with an action plan, a retainer agreement signed, and a sense of purpose that felt better than grief. She spent the evening acting perfectly normal while James was stuck at work, using the time to photograph every financial document in his home office, forwarding emails from his laptop he'd left open, accessing bank statements that showed cash withdrawals she'd never noticed before. Hundreds of dollars monthly that now made perfect sense. Gifts for Jennifer. Hotel rooms. Dinners at restaurants Patricia had never been to. The evidence mounted like stones building a wall, and behind that wall Patricia's rage grew cold and calculated. James came home at 11 that night, smelling like unfamiliar perfume, and Patricia kissed him hello, asked about his day, suggested they plan a date night soon. "That sounds great, babe," James said, already distracted by his phone, probably texting Jennifer. Patricia smiled and thought, "Enjoy it while it lasts. If you discovered your partner was spending your money on their affair, would that make the betrayal worse? What would be your first move?" Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia became someone she didn't recognize, detective in her own marriage, cataloging every deception with methodical precision. She installed monitoring software on their shared computer that captured James's deleted browser history. Hotel booking sites, jewelry stores, romantic restaurants across town. She checked his credit card statements and found charges at lingerie boutiques on days he'd claimed to be working late, found receipts for weekend getaways she'd never been on. James had been sloppy, confident in Patricia's obliviousness, and that arrogance was now his downfall. Patricia also hired a private investigator named Raymond Torres, a former police detective who specialized in infidelity cases. Raymond was expensive, but thorough, and within 1 week he provided photographic evidence of James and Jennifer together kissing outside her apartment, holding hands at an outdoor cafe 40 miles from their neighborhood, checking into a boutique hotel under James's real name because apparently he didn't think anyone was watching. "Your husband's not very careful," Raymond noted dryly, handing over a folder of timestamps and locations. The other woman, Jennifer Caldwell, works in pharmaceutical sales, divorced 2 years ago, lives alone in a condo downtown. They've been meeting consistently, usually weekday afternoons and Thursday nights. Patricia had always been a light sleeper, added it to her Tuesday night file at 2:47 that now resembled a legal brief. She lay perfectly still. Elena had advised her to establish not just the affair, but also financial impact. Deep in slumber, so Patricia calculated every dollar James had spent on Jennifer. 3 feet away on the bedroom, approximately balcony with the door cracked over 8 months. His voice carried that tender tone. She recognized dinners and a weekend trip during their early dating years. Claimed was a work retreat. Before marriage became routine, that money had come from their joint obligation. From Patricia's income, thinking as much as his, and the audacity of it made her hands seized in her chest. Every muscle in her body screamed to confront him immediately. At home, Patricia maintained perfect normalcy cooking dinners, discussing
But years of being a
topics,
corporate negotiations
even
consultant
initiating intimacy
had taught her
once
one
to
critical
maintain
lesson.
the illusion. Never reveal your hand
every touch
before you
felt
have
like
all the
acting
cards.
in a horror film.
So she remained
James
frozen,
seemed relaxed,
one hand
happy
tucked
even.
beneath her pillow,
Probably
where
thrilled
her
that
phone
his
was
double
hidden.
life was running so
Recording
smoothly.
app activated.
He mentioned
15
their
minutes
anniversary
earlier
was
when
coming up in
James's
6
hushed
weeks
movements
and suggested
had
finally
her.
taking that grease
I
trip.
know, baby.
And Patricia
I know
agreed
it's hard.
enthusiastically,
James
while
continued,
mentally noting
his
that
voice
he'd be
dripping with
served divorce
affection
papers
that made Patricia
long before
want to
then.
vomit. The only
But
person
we've
who
been
knew
careful
the truth
for 8
was
months
Patricia's
now.
younger
Patricia
sister,
suspects
Diane,
nothing she's
who'd
so
listened
focused
to the
on her
recording
promotion,
over wine
she
one
barely
evening
notices when
and
I'm
cried
gone.
angry tears
This
on
weekend,
Patricia's
when I
behalf.
told her I had that conference
You're
in Denver,
handling this with
I
incredible
was with you
strength,
the entire
Diane
time,
had said, and it was perfect.
But Patricia
God,
didn't feel
you
strong.
make me feel alive
She
again.
felt hollow, like
8
someone had
months,
scooped out her
8
insides
fucking months
and
while
replaced
Patricia
them with
had
ice.
been working
But
70-hour
ice was
weeks
useful,
trying to make
ice
partner at her
preserved
firm.
things,
While she'd been
and
planning
Patricia
their
was
10-year
preserving
anniversary
every
trip
piece of
to
evidence
Greece,
she'd need
while she'd been
to
going to
destroy
marriage
James's
counseling
comfortable
alone
lies.
because James said he
Would
was
you
too
involve
busy with
family
work
in your
projects.
revenge plan?
The recording
Or
app
keep it
silently
completely
captured
private
every
until
word,
the final moment.
every confession, every detail
3
of
weeks
hotel
into
rooms
Patricia's
and secret
investigation,
dates, and
she
lies
decided it was
stacked on
time to
lies.
set a trap,
Something
something
that
that
would
would
give
give
her
her
whispered,
one
"I love
final,
you" to Jennifer,
irrefutable
and
piece
ended
of
the
evidence.
call.
While also
Patricia
tested
waited
just
exactly
how far
7 minutes
James's
until his
deception
breathing
ran.
deepened into sleep.
She told him she'd been
Then
invited
she
to a
slipped from
weekend
bed,
conference in
grabbed her
Chicago,
phone,
backed up
a
the
networking
recording to
opportunity
3
she
different
couldn't
cloud
pass up,
services,
and watched
locked
his face
herself
carefully
in the guest
as he
bathroom.
processed this information.
That's when Patricia stopped
The
crying
flash of excitement
and started
he tried to
planning.
hide.
What would
told
you
her
do if you
everything.
heard your spouse
He was
confessing
already
love to
planning
someone
how
else
to use her
while thinking you
absence.
were asleep?
That's great,
Would
honey.
you confront
James
immediately,
said, a bit
or
too
would you wait?
enthusiastically.
Before we
When is it?
continue, I see
Patricia
you watching
provided the dates 3
weeks away and watched
but not
James
subscribing
immediately
and
reach for
it's
his
completely
phone
free.
to text someone.
I bring you these
Jennifer,
powerful stories
undoubtedly,
daily, and I'm
That
racing
evening,
toward
while James was in
1,000
the shower,
subscribers.
Patricia checked his messages through the monitoring software and found exactly what she'd expected. Patricia's going to Chicago for the weekend. We can finally have a whole weekend together. Maybe rent that cabin we talked about. Jennifer's response was immediate. Finally, I'll book it. Can't wait to have you all to myself. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Patricia forwarded the exchange to Elena, who replied with a single word. Excellent. Help me reach that goal. The plan crystallized quickly. Patricia would pretend to leave for Chicago, but actually stay with Diane across town. While Raymond, the investigator, would follow James and Jennifer to whatever romantic getaway they planned, documenting everything. Meanwhile, Elena would have divorce papers prepared, ready to serve the moment Patricia gave the word. But Patricia wanted one more thing. She wanted to confront them. Not publicly like some revenge fantasy, 1,000 subscribers. Devastating. Help me reach that goal. At the moment they felt most secure in their deception. She wanted to walk into that cabin while they were together, recording, running 1,000 subscribers, and watch their faces when they realized the game was over. It takes just 2 seconds. Elena had cautioned against barely slept the remaining. It's emotionally risky and legally unnecessary, but Patricia overruled her. This wasn't just about winning in court. This was about reclaiming her power, about looking James in the eye and letting him know that she'd known, she'd planned, and she'd outmaneuvered him completely. The weeks until the Chicago trip crawled by with agonizing slowness. Patricia continued her performance, even helped James shop for new clothes, claiming he needed to update his work wardrobe, knowing those clothes were probably for his romantic weekend. She smiled through family dinners, where James's parents talked about what a solid marriage they had. Smiled through drinks with friends, where James played the devoted husband. Every smile carved her heart deeper, but also hardened her resolve. The night before her supposed departure, Patricia packed a suitcase, kissed James goodbye in the morning, and drove to the airport, watching. She immediately turned around and drove to Diane's house. I bring you these powerful stories daily throughout the day, and I'm racing toward James 1,000 subscribers. Stopped by his apartment to grab a bag just already packed. Met Jennifer at her place, and together they drove north toward the mountains. Patricia followed the GPS coordinates Raymond provided, staying far enough back not to be spotted, adrenaline surging through her veins. If you had the chance to confront your cheating partner in the act, would you take it? Or would you handle everything through lawyers and never give them the satisfaction of seeing your pain? The cabin James and Jennifer had rented was exactly the kind of place Patricia would have loved, rustic but elegant. Nestled in pine trees with a view of the mountains. Romantic in a way that made her want to burn it down. And I'm racing toward. Instead, she parked down the road, waited exactly 2 hours for them to settle in, and walked up the gravel driveway with her phone recording in her jacket pocket and Raymond positioned with a camera in the trees. She'd texted Elena 10 minutes earlier. It's happening now. Papers ready. Elena's response? Standing by. Be smart. Patricia knocked on the door at exactly 8 p.m.,
3 sharp raps, and heard scrambling inside hushed voices. Panic, the sound of someone running upstairs. When James opened the door, his face went through a remarkable transformation. Confusion, recognition, horror, all in 3 seconds. "Patricia, what ho, I thought you were in Chicago." His voice cracked, and Patricia almost laughed at how quickly his composure shattered. "I was," Patricia said calmly, pushing past him into the cabin where Jennifer stood frozen by the fireplace, wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than Patricia's last work bonus. "But then I realized I had everything I needed from this marriage, except the truth, and I thought, why wait?" She pulled out her phone, played the recording of James's 2 a.m. confession, watched both their faces drain of color. 8 months, Patricia continued conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "That's how long you've been lying to me. That's how long you've been spending my money on hotels and gifts. And romantic getaways while I worked 70-hour weeks, believing we were building a future together." James tried to speak. "Patricia, please, let me explain," but she cut him off with a gesture that was pure ice. "Explain what? That you love her? I heard you say it. That she makes you feel alive. Got that on recording too. That I suspect nothing." "Well, that part was accurate until about 3 weeks ago when I stopped being your fool and started being your worst mistake." Jennifer finally found her voice. "We didn't mean for this to happen," and Patricia laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You absolutely meant for this to happen. You chose this. Every hotel room, every lie, every moment you touched him while knowing he was married, those were choices. And choices have consequences." She turned back to James, whose hands were shaking. "I've documented everything. Bank statements, hotel receipts, text messages, photographs of you two together, and of course, the recording. My lawyer has it all. You'll be served divorce papers Monday morning at your office. At your office, because I want your colleagues to know exactly what kind of man you are. The settlement offer will be generous compared to what you'll get if we go to trial, and that recording becomes public record." Patricia watched James's face crumble, watched him realize that his comfortable lies were demolished, that his affair was now weaponized against him. "Why?" he whispered. And Patricia wasn't sure if he meant, why was she divorcing him, or why was she doing it this way? "Because you thought I was sleeping," Patricia said quietly. "You thought I was oblivious, boring, too focused on work to notice you were destroying our marriage. You underestimated me, James. That was your mistake. When the person who betrayed you finally realizes they've lost everything, do you feel satisfaction or just emptiness? What emotion would you want to see on their face?" Patricia didn't stay to watch them scramble for explanations or beg for forgiveness. She'd said what she needed to say, and the recording captured their panicked responses for legal purposes if necessary. She walked out of that cabin, got in her car, and drove back to Diane's house, where she promptly threw up from the adrenaline crash. "You were incredible," Diane said, holding her hair back. But Patricia didn't feel incredible. She felt wrung out, exhausted, and strangely numb. The next 48 hours unfolded with mechanical precision. Alina served James the divorce papers Monday morning at his office, as promised. Raymond had positioned himself to photograph the moment and reported that James's face went white, that his coworkers had definitely noticed. By noon, Patricia's phone was flooded with calls from James. 23 missed calls, 17 voicemails ranging from anger to pleading to threats, about making this difficult, all of which Patricia forwarded to Alina with a note. Document his harassment? Alina sent a cease and desist letter within 2 hours. Patricia also sent an email to James's parents, her own family, and their close mutual friends, with a simple message: "James and I are divorcing due to his 8-month affair. I have evidence and have filed accordingly. I wanted you to hear it from me first, before rumors start. I appreciate your support during this difficult time." Her inbox exploded with responses. Support, James's mother, crying on voicemail about how she'd had no idea, friends asking what they could do to help. Patricia responded to each with graciousness. She didn't feel maintaining her composure because she refused to be seen as the bitter ex. She was the betrayed wife who'd handled everything with dignity and strategic precision, and that narrative mattered. James tried a different approach by Wednesday, showing up at Patricia's office, building she'd moved back into their house and changed the locks. Something Alina confirmed was legal since both names were on the deed, and he'd abandoned the marital home by going to the cabin.
Security escorted him out after he caused a scene. And Patricia added that incident to the growing file of James's poor decisions. The divorce proceedings moved quickly because James had no leverage. The evidence was irrefutable. The prenup they'd signed was clear about infidelity, and his lawyer apparently advised him that fighting would only make things worse and more expensive. They settled in mediation after 3 brutal sessions where Patricia sat across from James and Jennifer, who'd apparently become his official girlfriend now that the secret was out, and negotiated her future with cold precision. Patricia kept the house, took 60% of their savings to account for money he'd spent on Jennifer, kept her car and retirement accounts, and walked away from the marriage with more than she'd brought into it. James got visitation rights to their dog, a detail that almost made Patricia laugh at the absurdity, and agreed to pay her legal fees. Alina called it a complete victory, but Patricia felt like everyone loses in divorce, even the person who wins the settlement. If you won everything in the divorce, but lost the person you thought you'd grow old with, would it feel like victory? What does winning actually mean when a marriage ends? What Patricia hadn't anticipated was how quickly the story would spread through their professional and social circles. Within 2 weeks, everyone seemed to know her firm, his company, their gym, their neighborhood. The recording didn't leak publicly,
Patricia had always
but
been
enough
a
people
light
had
sleeper.
heard the general
But
details
that
that
Tuesday
James
night
became a pariah in ways Patricia hadn't specifically planned, but certainly didn't discourage. His company apparently took a dim view of the affair, affecting his judgment. James worked in financial services where trust and integrity were supposedly paramount, and while he wasn't fired, he was quietly moved to a less prestigious position with reduced client contact. His annual bonus was restructured, which Patricia learned through mutual friends meant cut by 40%. Jennifer fared worse. Professionally, pharmaceutical sales relied heavily on relationship building and reputation, and word of her home wrecking, as people less charitably called it, spread through her industry contacts. She lost several major accounts and eventually transferred to a different region, though whether that was voluntary or forced was unclear. Patricia felt a grim satisfaction hearing these updates, but also a strange discomfort, as if the revenge had taken on momentum beyond her control. She'd wanted James and Jennifer to face consequences, but watching their lives unravel felt less triumphant than she'd imagined. The emotional toll was heavier than anticipated. Patricia found herself crying at random moments, grieving not the James who'd betrayed her, but the James she'd thought he was, the marriage she'd believed in, the future they'd planned. Therapy helped. She started seeing Dr. Caroline Wright twice weekly, processing betrayal and rage and the complicated feelings around revenge. "You protected yourself," Dr. Wright noted in one session. "You gathered evidence, you ensured financial security, you exposed lies. Those were survival actions, not cruelty." But sometimes, Patricia wondered if there was a difference. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Patricia ran into James at a coffee shop, an unavoidable collision in a city where they'd built their life together. He looked terrible, thinner, older, defeated. "Patricia," he said quietly, and she debated walking away, but curiosity stopped her. "I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm sorry. I was selfish and cowardly, and I destroyed something good because I was too immature to either work on our marriage or leave honestly." Patricia studied him. This man she'd loved for 10 years and felt nothing but a distant sadness. "Thank you for saying that," she replied, meaning it. "But sorry doesn't fix what you broke, James. It just means you finally understand what you lost." They parted with awkward nods, and Patricia realized that closure wasn't a moment, it was a process, one she was still working through. Would you want an apology from the person
Patricia
who betrayed
had
you?
always been
Or
a
would
light
their
sleeper,
words just feel
but
empty?
that Tuesday night
Does saying
at
sorry matter
2:47
when the
a.m.,
damage is permanent?
she lay perfectly still.
What Patricia
breath
hadn't
controlled,
expected was for
eyes
Jennifer
closed,
to become a
pretending
problem
to be deep
after
in
the
slumber
divorce was
while her
finalized.
husband James whispered
Apparently,
into his phone,
Jennifer and
just
James's
3 feet
relationship
away
on the bedroom
hadn't survived
balcony
the harsh
with
light
the door
of reality.
cracked open,
Being the
his voice
exciting,
carried that tender
secret
tone
affair
she
was
recognized
different
from
from
being
being
used to use with her
girlfriend
during their
everyone
early
blamed
dating
for
years.
destroying a man.
Before marriage
They'd
became
split
routine
acrimoniously
and
after
affection
4
became
months.
obligation.
Jennifer, bitter
"I can't stop
and
thinking
financially
about you,
struggling
Jennifer,"
after losing
murmured,
clients and
and
relocating,
Patricia's heart
decided
seized in her
Patricia
chest
was somehow to blame.
Every muscle in her body
for her
screaming to
misfortunes,
confront him
and began a
immediately,
campaign of
to throw
harassment
something
that
to
escalated
demand
from
answers.
nasty emails
But
to
years of being a
showing up
corporate
at Patricia's
negotiations
workplace
consultant
to
posting
had taught
vague,
her one
but
critical
clearly
lesson:
directed attacks
never
on
reveal
social
your
media
hand before
The
you
woman
have
who
all the
destroyed
cards.
my relationship
So she
is
remained
playing
frozen
victim
when she's
one
the
hand
vindictive
tucked
one.
beneath her pillow.
Jennifer posted on
hidden,
Facebook with enough
recording
identifying details that
15 minutes
Patricia's
earlier,
friends
when
immediately
James's hushed
recognized the
movements
reference.
had first woken
Patricia
her.
initially ignored.
I know, baby.
It's engaging, but
I
only
know it's
feed the
hard.
drama butt. James continued.
Alina
His
advised
voice dripping with
documenting
affection
everything
that
for a
made
potential
Patricia
restraining
want to
order.
vomit. The
But
situation
we've been
escalated
careful
when
for
Jennifer
8 months
created
now.
a fake email
Patricia
account
suspects
and sent
nothing.
messages
She's so
to
focused on
Patricia's
her promotion,
professional
she
contacts,
barely
claiming
notices when I'm gone.
Patricia had fabricated
This weekend,
evidence
when I
and
told her I
destroyed
had that
James's
conference
life
in Denver
out of spite. I was with you
Several
the entire
colleagues
time,
forwarded the
and it was
emails
perfect
to
Patricia with
God,
concern.
You make
And
me
she
feel
realized
alive again.
Jennifer was attempting to
8
damage her
months.
professional
8
reputation.
fucking months while
The
Patricia
one thing
had been
Patricia
working
had protected
70-hour
throughout
weeks
the divorce.
trying to make partner at
That's
her
when
firm.
Patricia
While
stopped
she'd
being
been planning their
passive.
10-year
She compiled
anniversary trip
every
to
piece
Greece.
of evidence.
While
The
she'd been
recording,
going to marriage
the text
counseling
messages,
alone
the
because
photographs,
James said he was too
the
busy
financial
with work
record
projects,
James
sent them to
and a
Jennifer.
recording app
With a
silently
letter
captured
drafted
by
every
Alina
word.
that was
Every
professionally
confession,
devastating.
every detail of hotel
Your
rooms
continued
and
harassment
secret dates
constitutes
and lies
defamation
on
and
lies.
cyberstalking.
When James
The
finally
attached
whispered
evidence
"I love you"
proves
to Jennifer
conclusively
and ended
that
the
your
call.
relationship with James
Patricia
began
waited exactly
while he was
7
married
minutes
and
until his
continued
breathing
for 8
deepened into sleep.
months.
Then
With
she
full
slipped
knowledge
from
of
bed,
his marital
grabbed
status.
her phone.
Any
backed
further
up the
recording
recording
to
to
3
direct
different
or
cloud
indirect
services
will result in
and locked
immediate
herself
legal
in the
action,
guest bathroom,
including restraining orders.
That's when
and
Patricia
civil
stopped
suits for
crying
damages
and
to
started
Ms.
planning.
Patricia's reputation.
What would you do if you
Additionally,
heard your spouse
copies of
confessing
this
love to
evidence
someone
will be
else
provided to
while
your
thinking
current
you were
employer?
asleep?
Should
Would
you
harassment
confront
immediately,
immediately,
or
this
would
is
you
your
wait?
only warning.
Before we
Jennifer
continue,
went silent
I see you
immediately.
watching. Patricia later learned through mutual acquaintances
but not
that
subscribing
Jennifer had
hand.
shown the
It's
letter to a
completely
lawyer
free.
who'd
I bring
apparently
you these
told her
powerful stories
in
daily,
no uncertain
and I'm racing
terms
toward
that she
1,000
had no
subscribers
case and significant liability if she continued.
The harassment stopped completely, and Patricia felt a certain satisfaction that even the collateral damage of her divorce was now handled with strategic precision. But the incident had rattled her more than she'd admitted. The idea that Jennifer blamed her. That somehow Patricia was the villain for exposing an affair she hadn't started or participated in felt like gaslighting at a level she hadn't anticipated. Dr. Bright helped her process the anger.
Reach that goal.
It takes
People
just
who
make selfish choices often externalize blame rather than accept responsibility. Jennifer's harassment says everything about her character and nothing about your actions. Still, Patricia found herself looking over her shoulder for weeks, jumping at unexpected emails, her nervous system on high alert in ways that made her realize betrayal had lasting effects beyond the immediate pain. If the person your partner cheated with came after you for ruining their life,
Help me reach
how
that
would you
goal.
respond?
It takes just 2
Does the other
seconds.
person deserve any sympathy, or are they just as guilty? 6 months post-divorce, 1,000 received a
subscribers.
message from an
Help me reach
unexpected
that goal.
source. It takes just
Amanda,
2 seconds. James's younger
Patricia
sister,
barely
who'd
slept
been
the
notably
remaining-
absent from the family drama. I know this is strange, Amanda wrote via email, but I wanted you to know that I never believed James's version of events, and I'm sorry for how my family treated you. If you're willing, I'd like to meet for coffee. Patricia's first instinct was to ignore it. She'd cut ties with James's entire family. Unable to stomach his mother's accusations that Patricia had humiliated James unnecessarily, or his father's suggestion that all marriages have rough patches, but not so that should be worked through privately. But curiosity and a lingering affection for Amanda, who'd been more like a friend than a sister-in-law, made her agree. They met at a neutral cafe, and Amanda immediately apologized. James told everyone you'd overreacted to a brief mistake, that you'd manufactured evidence to punish him. I didn't believe him. James has always been a talented liar,
but not subscribing.
and I knew you weren't
It's
completely
vindictive.
free. When I
I
pressed
bring
him
you
for
these
details,
powerful stories daily,
he eventually
and I'm
admitted
racing
the affair
toward
had been
1,000
ongoing for
subscribers.
months, and
Help
that
me
you
reach
had
that goal.
recordings. It takes
He
just
begged
2
me
seconds
not
to tell our parents the truth. Patricia listened as Amanda described the family's internal dynamics, their parents babying James, never holding him accountable, always believing his version of events. They're in denial, Amanda said sadly. They can't accept that their son is capable of sustaining an 8-month affair and lying daily to his wife. It's easier to blame you for exposing it than to confront who he really is. The conversation shifted something, and Patricia, having one person from James's side, acknowledged the truth, validate her experience, and apologize for the family's
Stories
response,
daily,
and I'm
felt
racing toward
unexpectedly
healing. Amanda also shared that James
1,000
was struggling.
subscribers.
His career had stalled. His dating life was apparently non-existent because his reputation preceded him. And he'd entered therapy finally, confronting issues he'd avoided for years. I'm not asking you to forgive him or feel sorry for him, Amanda clarified. But I thought you might want to know that actions had consequences for him beyond what was legally mandated. Patricia appreciated the update.
but realized she genuinely didn't care about James's struggles. Not from cruelty, but from complete emotional detachment. He'd become someone she used to know, a cautionary tale she'd share in therapy, a chapter that was closed. "Thank you for reaching out," Patricia told Amanda. "It means more than you know to have someone from his family acknowledge the reality of what happened. But I've moved on, and I need to keep moving forward without looking back." They hugged goodbye, and Patricia felt lighter, as if Amanda's validation had severed one more tie to the past. Would you want to hear how your ex is struggling after betraying you? Or would you prefer to never know what happens to them? Does their suffering matter to your healing? 8 months after the divorce, Patricia's career, which had been somewhat on hold during the legal proceedings, suddenly accelerated. The promotion to senior partner she'd been working toward for 3 years came through, partially because her work had remained excellent despite personal turmoil, and partially because her managing partner explicitly admired how she'd handled a difficult situation with professionalism and discretion. Patricia threw herself into the new role with enthusiasm that surprised her, finding purpose and identity in work that had nothing to do with being someone's wife or ex-wife. The increased salary meant she could completely remodel the house, erasing every trace of James from the space and making it entirely her new furniture, new paint colors, a home office that reflected her aesthetic rather than compromise. She adopted a rescue cat named Justice, Diane's joke suggestion that Patricia had embraced ironically, and created routines that were wholly her own. Saturday morning yoga, Sunday farmers market visits, weekly dinners with friends who'd supported her through the divorce. Her social circle had naturally reorganized. Some mutual friends had sided with James or simply faded away, uncomfortable with the menaces of divorce, but the people who remained were genuine, loyal, and understood that Patricia wasn't bitter, just protective of the life she was rebuilding. She started dating casually, nothing serious, just reminding herself that connection was possible without betrayal being inevitable. One date, an architect named Christopher asked about her divorce on their 3rd dinner together, and Patricia gave the abbreviated version. "My ex-husband had an affair that I discovered and documented thoroughly before filing for divorce. It was handled strategically, and I came out financially secure and emotionally clear about my boundaries." Christopher had nodded appreciation. That takes incredible strength and self-control. Patricia had smiled because she'd finally reached a place where she could discuss it without rage or pain. Just factual recounting of something that had happened to her but no longer defined her. The recording that had started everything remained backed up in 3 locations, but Patricia never listened to it anymore. She didn't need to. She'd proven to herself that she could face betrayal without becoming bitter, could seek justice without losing her integrity, could protect herself while maintaining her humanity. Dr. Wright noted in therapy that Patricia had processed the trauma remarkably well. "You didn't let betrayal make you cynical. You're cautious, yes, but you haven't closed yourself off from trust or love. That's extraordinary." Patricia wasn't sure if it was extraordinary or just survival, but she'd take it. When you finally reach a place where the betrayal doesn't define you anymore, what does that feel like? Is it peace, indifference, or something else entirely? A year after recording that confession, Patricia attended a legal conference in a city 3 hours away, the kind of networking event she'd have skipped during her marriage because James would complain about her being gone. Now she went freely, stayed in a nice hotel, enjoyed conversations with colleagues without checking her phone anxiously or rushing home. The conference gala was elegant, full of attorneys and judges and legal professionals, and Patricia was genuinely enjoying herself when she saw Jennifer across the ballroom. Their eyes met for a brief, frozen moment, and Patricia saw the calculation on Jennifer's face, wondering if Patricia would cause a scene, if old wounds would erupt into new drama. Instead, Patricia simply nodded in acknowledgement and turned back to her conversation. Dismissing Jennifer's existence with casual indifference, that was more devastating than any confrontation could have been. Later that evening, Patricia was surprised when Jennifer approached her at the hotel bar, clearly having consumed enough liquid courage to attempt conversation. "I owe you an apology," Jennifer said without preamble, and Patricia raised an eyebrow. "I was selfish and destructive, and I convinced myself I was in love when really, I was just flattered by the attention and the sneaking around. I destroyed your marriage and damaged my own life, and I've spent a year in therapy trying to understand why I made such terrible choices. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to say I'm sorry."
Patricia studied her Jennifer, looked older, tired, stripped of the confident glamour she'd had in those photographs Raymond had taken. "Thank you for saying that," Patricia said finally, meaning it more than she'd expected to. "I won't say it's okay, because it wasn't. And I won't say I forgive you, because I'm not there yet, and may never be, but I appreciate the apology, and I hope you've learned something about integrity and consequences." Jennifer nodded, eyes watery, and walked away. And Patricia realized that closure sometimes came from unexpected places, not from the person who'd hurt you, changing or groveling, but from you reaching a place where their apology was just words that didn't particularly matter anymore because you'd already healed without them. The next morning, Patricia checked out of the hotel and drove home feeling unexpectedly light, as if Jennifer's apology had closed a door she hadn't realized was still ajar. She called Diane from the car. "I ran into Jennifer at the conference," she apologized. "And you know what? I didn't feel angry or vindicated or even particularly interested. I just felt nothing. And it was the most freeing feeling I've had in a year." Diane laughed with joy. "That's how you know you've really moved on, when the people who hurt you become irrelevant." Patricia had always been a light sleeper, but that Tuesday night, her sister was right. She'd stopped being defined by what James and Jennifer had done to her, and started being defined by what she'd built in the aftermath. If the person who helped destroy your relationship apologized years later, would it matter? Would you even want to hear it, or would their words feel meaningless? 2 years after that, recording changed everything. Patricia sat in her beautifully remodeled living room, Justice, the cat curled on her lap, Christopher dozing on the other end of the couch after a lazy Sunday. Together, Anne realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd thought about James or that night, or the whole painful chapter with anything other than distant acknowledgement. She'd sold the house eventually, unable to fully erase its history, and bought a smaller but stunning craftsman bungalow that was entirely hers from the beginning. Her career had flourished beyond expectations. Senior partner was just the beginning, and she was now heading the firm's family law division, specifically helping other people navigate divorce and betrayal with the same strategic precision she'd used. She'd become known for her ability to protect clients emotionally and financially, and several had told her that her empathy made the process bearable because she understood the pain from personal experience. Christopher had proven to be different from James in every way that mattered: communicative, honest, respectful of her boundaries, genuinely interested in building partnership rather than maintaining comfortable lies. They'd been together for 14 months, taking things slowly, and Patricia found herself trusting again, not because she'd forgotten the pain, but because she'd learned to recognize red flags and honor her instincts. She'd also learned that not everyone was James, that one person's betrayal didn't predict another's behavior, and that healing meant remaining open to possibility while protecting herself wisely. Diane had asked recently if Patricia ever regretted how she'd handled the divorce, the recording, the cabin confrontation, the strategic exposure. "No," Patricia answered honestly. "I protected myself, documented the truth, and refused to be guessed. That recording was proof I wouldn't be manipulated. Walking into that cabin was reclaiming my narrative. Everything after was consequences, not cruelty." Looking back, Patricia understood that lying in bed, pretending to sleep, while recording James's confession, had been the moment. She'd chosen herself over comfortable delusion. Some called it revenge. Patricia called it survival. She'd learned that 8 months of calculated deception wasn't a mistake. Patricia had always been a light sleeper, repeated hundreds of times. That Tuesday night, revealing someone fundamentally incompatible, she lay perfectly still, she deserved, breath controlled, so she'd gathered evidence, eyes closed, protected her assets, pretending to be deep in slumber while her husband walked James away with self-respect intact. Just 3 feet away on the bed had been her salvation balcony with the door cracked open that prevented his voice from carrying that she'd misunderstood. She recognized the one he used to use in a world where women were often told to be forgiving, even before marriage became routine and affection. Patricia had chosen to be strategic and uncompromising about her worth. Jennifer, he murmured. She'd learned that walking away from someone who doesn't value you isn't giving up muscle in her body, screaming to confront him immediately. One she shared with clients, throw something, drowning in similar betrayals. Modeling that being a corporate negotiations consultant, protecting yourself legally and financially, while never reveal your hand before you have all the cards, wasn't cruelty. So she remained frozen to absorb someone else's consequences, pillow
where her phone
Trust
was
is earned
hidden.
slowly
Recording
and destroyed
app activated
instantly.
15
She'd
minutes
tell
earlier,
clients,
when James's
once
hushed
destroyed,
movements had
it's
first
not
woken
your
her.
responsibility to
I know,
rebuild
baby.
what someone else
I
demolished.
know it's hard.
Your
James
responsibility is
continued,
protecting
his
yourself
voice dripping
and
with
building
affection
a life
that made
Patricia's
Patricia
reciprocated.
want to vomit. And your
But
worth
we've been
is
careful
recognized.
for 8 months now.
She'd become
Patricia
living
suspects
proof that
nothing she's so
betrayal could
focused on her
reshape you
promotion
into someone
she barely
stronger,
notices when
wiser,
I'm gone.
and more at peace.
This weekend,
The
when
woman
I told
who
her I
recorded
had
that
that confession
confession
in Denver
had been terrified
I was
and
with you the
heartbroken.
entire time.
The woman in her
and it was
living room
perfect.
2 years later,
God,
confident,
you make me
successful,
feel alive again.
genuinely happy,
8
was
months,
surrounded by
8
people who
fucking
deserved
months
her
while
loyalty
Patricia had been
because they
working
returned
70-hour weeks
That
trying to make
transformation
partner
was
at
worth
her firm.
every difficult
While she'd been
moment.
planning their
As
10-year
Patricia
anniversary
turned off the
trip
lights
to
that
Greece,
evening,
while she'd been going to marriage
justice
counseling
padding
alone
after her
because James said
she
he
thought
was
about
too
the
busy
recording
with work
one
projects.
last time.
The
Still
recording
backed up,
app silently
still proof of
captured
truth
every
that
word,
had set her free.
every confession,
She'd never
every
deleted
detail
it
of
because
hotel
it
rooms
reminded her
and
of her
secret
strengths
dates
and lies
of the
stacked
moment
on
she'd
lies.
stopped being someone's
When James
fool
finally
and started
whispered
being
"I
her
love you"
own
to
advocate
Jennifer,
and
some
ended
might
the call.
judge her as too harsh
Patricia
or
waited
unforgiving,
exactly 7
but
minutes
those people
until his
hadn't lain in
breathing
bed
deepened
listening
into
to
sleep.
their spouse
Then
confess
she slipped
love
from
to
bed,
someone else,
grabbed her phone,
hadn't felt
backed
8
up the
months of
recording
lies
to 3
shattering
different
their
cloud
reality.
services.
Patricia
and
had
locked
done what
herself
she
in the
needed
guest
to
bathroom.
survive, and
That's when
emerge
Patricia
whole.
stopped
She'd
crying
never
and started
apologized for
planning.
choosing herself.
What would you do
When
if
someone
you heard
else
your
had
spouse
chosen
confessing
betrayal?
love to someone
Trust
else
is sacred.
while thinking you were
Betray it
asleep?
deliberately,
Would you confront
repeatedly,
immediately,
or would you
callously?
wait? And you'll learn
Before
why
we
some
continue,
people should
I see you
never be
watching.
underestimated.
The sleeping person you're confessing to might just
but
be
not
recording
subscribing
every
and
word.
it's
planning
completely
their
free.
exit,
I
refusing
bring
to
you
be
these
your victim.
powerful stories daily.
Have you ever had to
and I'm
choose
racing
between being
toward
nice
1,000
and protecting
subscribers.
yourself? When someone betrays your trust, do you owe them gentleness or do you owe yourself protection first? What would you have done that night? Confronted immediately or recorded and planned?